My ex-boyfriend's wife accused me of having his child and showed up at my workplace demanding a DNA test. Then she started stalking my 4-year-old daughter and I had to get a restraining order, but that didn't stop her family from continuing the harassment campaign. Our company holds this event every July at Riverside Park. All employees bring their families, and there are games, food trucks, and activities for kids. I brought Maya, who had just turned 4 in June. She wore her favorite purple dress with unicorns and spent most of the afternoon on the playground equipment. Around 3 in the afternoon, I noticed my ex-boyfriend, Ryan, 31 male, and his wife, Jessica, 29 female, standing near the food trucks. Ryan worked for one of our vendor companies, so his presence made sense. I had met Jessica briefly twice before at mutual friends gatherings, but we had never really talked. She seemed nice enough those times, just quiet. Maya was playing on the swings when Ryan approached me. He made small talk about the weather and asked basic questions about Maya. Normal parent conversation. Jessica joined us after a few minutes, and I introduced her to Maya. Jessica knelt down to Maya's level and complimented her dress. Maya, being 4, immediately launched into a detailed explanation of why unicorns were better than horses. The interaction lasted maybe 10 minutes. Ryan mentioned they were trying to have kids themselves, and Jessica nodded along. I wished them luck, and we went our separate ways. Maya returned to the playground, and I thought nothing more of it. 3 days later, my coworker Sarah, 26 female, pulled me aside during lunch. She told me Jessica had called our office main line asking about me. Jessica claimed to be an old friend trying to reconnect, but she was asking specific questions about Maya. Questions like when exactly Maya was born, whether I had been married, and if Maya's father was in the picture. Our receptionist Linda, 45 female, is protective of employee privacy and refused to give out any information. She told Jessica to contact me directly if she wanted to reconnect. Sarah only found out about the call because Linda mentioned it to our office manager, who then told Sarah since she and I are close friends. I found the whole thing weird but not alarming. Maybe Jessica was just curious after meeting Maya, or perhaps she was gathering information for baby planning. People sometimes get intensely interested in other families when they are trying to start their own. 4 days after Sarah told me about the phone call, I received a Facebook message from Jessica. The message was 3 paragraphs long and very detailed. She wrote that she had been thinking about our conversation at the picnic and noticed how much Maya resembled Ryan. She listed specific features, the shape of Maya's eyes, her nose, the way she smiled, even the way she held her head when listening. Jessica asked if I would be willing to meet for coffee to discuss something important. She said she understood this might be awkward, but she needed to ask me some questions for her own peace of mind. The message ended with her phone number and a request that I call her when I was ready to talk. I screenshot the message and showed it to Sarah and my sister Claire, 31 female. Both of them found it concerning. Sarah pointed out that Jessica barely interacted with Maya at the picnic, certainly not long enough to study her facial features in detail. Claire reminded me that some people become obsessive when dealing with fertility issues and might project their desires onto other people's children. I decided not to respond to Jessica's message. Maya's father is David, 30 male, my college boyfriend who I dated for 2 years after Ryan and I broke up. David and I had an amicable split when he moved to Portland for work. He knows about Maya and sends birthday cards, but he was never interested in being an active parent. Maya has never asked about him in detail, and I have always planned to have that conversation when she gets older. David has dark hair and brown eyes, while Maya inherited my light brown hair and green eyes. She does not look like Ryan at all. Ryan has black hair, blue eyes, and a completely different facial structure. Anyone who knew both men would immediately identify David as Maya's father based on appearance alone. 2 days after Jessica's Facebook message, she sent another one. This message was shorter but more direct. She wrote that she had looked up David on social media and found photos of him. She claimed Maya looked nothing like David but looked exactly like Ryan. She said she knew I might be protecting Ryan's marriage by keeping quiet, but she deserved to know the truth. Jessica ended this message by saying she had told Ryan about her suspicions. According to her, Ryan became very defensive and angry, which she interpreted as confirmation of guilt. She said Ryan refused to discuss the matter further and told her she was being ridiculous. I showed this message to Claire, who immediately suggested I block Jessica on all social media platforms. Claire pointed out that Jessica was escalating her behavior and might become more aggressive if I continued to ignore her. I took Claire's advice and blocked Jessica on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. The blocking worked for exactly 3 days. On Saturday morning, Jessica found my personal email address and sent a message there. This email was longer and more aggressive than her Facebook messages. She accused me of deliberately avoiding her and demanded I stop hiding behind social media blocks. Jessica wrote that she had been married to Ryan for 3 years and deserved honesty from both of us. She said my continued silence was proof that I had something to hide. The email included several photos of Maya from my social media accounts, placed side by side with photos of Ryan from various periods of his life. Looking at Jessica's photo comparisons, I could see why someone might think there were similarities if they were looking for them. Maya and Ryan both have light-colored eyes and similar hair textures. But these were generic features that thousands of people share. Maya's bone structure, the shape of her face, and her expressions were completely different from Ryan's. The email ended with Jessica's phone number again and a demand that I call her within 48 hours. She wrote that if I did not contact her, she would find other ways to get the truth. I forwarded the email to Claire and also sent it to my friend Marcus, 35M, who is a lawyer specializing in family law. Marcus read the email and immediately called me. He said Jessica's behavior was concerning and suggested I document everything in case I needed to file harassment charges later. Marcus advised me to send Jessica one clear email stating that Maya was not Ryan's child and requesting that she stop contacting me. He said having this documentation would be helpful if Jessica continued her harassment. I spent Sunday afternoon crafting a response email. My email to Jessica was polite but firm. I explained that Maya's father was David, provided the time frame of our relationship, and stated clearly that Ryan and I had no romantic contact during the relevant period. I told Jessica I understood her concerns but asked her to stop contacting me and respect my privacy. I sent the email Sunday evening and received a response within 2 hours. Jessica's reply was hostile and accusatory. She wrote that she did not believe my explanation and thought I was lying to protect Ryan's reputation. She claimed she had done research and found inconsistencies in my story that proved I was covering up the truth. Jessica's email included a detailed timeline of Ryan's activities during the year Maya was conceived. She had apparently gone through his old social media posts, credit card statements, and travel records to construct this timeline. According to her research, Ryan had taken several business trips to my city during the relevant months. The level of detail in Jessica's timeline was disturbing. She knew which hotels Ryan had stayed at, which restaurants he had visited, and even which gas stations he had used. She had clearly spent considerable time and effort investigating his activities from 5 years ago. Jessica's email ended with an ultimatum. She demanded that I agree to a DNA test to prove Maya's parentage. She offered to pay for the test and said she would leave me alone once the results confirmed Ryan was not the father. If I refused, she threatened to contact my employer, my family members, and Maya's school to share her suspicions. I called Marcus immediately after reading this email. He said Jessica's behavior had crossed into stalking territory and recommended I contact the police to file a report. He also suggested I inform my workplace security about the situation in case Jessica tried to confront me at the office. Monday morning, I spoke with my supervisor Janet, 42 female, and our HR representative about Jessica's threats. They assured me that company policy protected employees from harassment and that security would be notified about the situation. Janet suggested I park in the covered garage rather than the street for the rest of the week. I filed a police report Monday afternoon. The officer who took my statement said harassment cases involving social media and email were increasingly common. He said they would document the incident and could pursue charges if Jessica's behavior escalated further. Monday evening, Jessica sent another email. This one was the longest yet, filled with detailed accusations and demands. She claimed she had spoken to mutual friends who confirmed that Ryan and I had maintained secret contact over the years. She said these friends told her Ryan had always carried a torch for me and had mentioned me frequently during his relationship with Jessica. I knew these claims were false because Ryan and I had virtually no mutual friends remaining from college. Most of our shared social circle had scattered across the country after graduation. The few people who might remember both of us lived in different states and had no current contact with either Ryan or me. Jessica's email also included threats about what she would do if I continued to refuse the DNA test. She said she would hire a private investigator to gather evidence of my relationship with Ryan. She threatened to contact Maya's daycare and my apartment complex management with her accusations. By Tuesday morning, I had forwarded all of Jessica's messages to Marcus and prepared copies for the police. I planned to request a restraining order if she continued her harassment. I never expected her to show up at my workplace in person. Which brings me back to yesterday morning in the lobby. Jessica stood there with her phone, showing Maya's photo to anyone who would look. She announced loudly that she knew the truth and would not leave until I admitted it. Building security arrived within minutes and escorted her out, but not before she shouted across the lobby that she would be back with proof. The rest of my workday was ruined. Colleagues kept asking if I was okay, and I had to explain the situation to several people. HR scheduled a meeting for this afternoon to discuss additional security measures. I left work early and picked up Maya from daycare, checking over my shoulder the entire drive home. Last night, Jessica sent 3 more emails. Each one was more unhinged than the last. She claimed she had hired the private investigator and would soon have evidence of my lies. She said Ryan's defensive behavior proved he was hiding something and that she would expose the truth regardless of the consequences to their marriage. I have not heard from Ryan directly through any of this. Part of me wonders if he even knows the full extent of Jessica's behavior. Another part of me thinks he should intervene and stop his wife from harassing me and potentially frightening Maya. This morning, I contacted Marcus again to discuss the restraining order process. He said yesterday's workplace incident should be enough to get a temporary order approved. We have an appointment Thursday morning to file the paperwork. I also called Maya's daycare to alert them about the situation. The director assured me they would not release any information about Maya to anyone and would call me immediately if Jessica appeared there. The whole situation has consumed my life for 2 weeks now. I cannot focus at work. I keep checking my email for new messages from Jessica, and I find myself looking over my shoulder everywhere I go. Maya has started asking why mommy seems worried all the time, and I do not know how to explain this to a 4-year-old. What makes this particularly frustrating is how easily Jessica could verify the truth if she wanted to. David is active on social media, and photos of him are readily available. Maya's birth certificate lists David as the father. I have dated photos and social media posts from the time period that clearly show my relationship with David. But Jessica does not want the truth. She wants to believe her suspicions are correct, and no amount of evidence will convince her otherwise. She has constructed an elaborate fantasy about Ryan and me having a secret affair, and she is determined to prove it regardless of reality. I keep wondering what I could have done differently. Should I have responded to her first message instead of ignoring it? Should I have been more sympathetic to her fertility struggles? Should I have asked Ryan to intervene earlier? But then I remembered that I did nothing wrong. I attended a company picnic with my daughter. I made polite conversation with people I barely knew. I have not contacted Ryan in years and have no interest in rekindling any kind of relationship with him. Jessica created this entire situation in her own mind, and now she is making it my problem to solve. She is harassing me, threatening my career, and potentially frightening my daughter because she cannot accept that her suspicions are baseless. Tomorrow I will file for the restraining order and hope it ends this nightmare. I just want to go back to my normal life with Maya, where the biggest drama is which cartoon to watch after dinner and whether she will eat her vegetables without complaining. Update 1. The restraining order hearing did not go as planned, and Jessica's harassment has escalated in ways I never expected. I filed for the temporary restraining order the Thursday after my original post. Marcus accompanied me to the courthouse, and we presented all of Jessica's emails, screenshots of her social media contact attempts, and witness statements from my coworkers who saw her confrontation in the office lobby. The judge reviewed our documentation and agreed that Jessica's behavior constituted harassment. He granted a temporary restraining order that prohibited Jessica from contacting me directly, coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace, and contacting Maya's daycare. The order was served to Jessica the following Monday. I thought this would end the situation. I was wrong. Jessica's response to the restraining order was to escalate her investigation rather than back down. Within a week of receiving the court papers, she had contacted my landlord, my neighbors, Maya's pediatrician's office, and even my old college roommate who I had not spoken to in 4 years. My landlord Tom, 52M, called me Tuesday evening after receiving Jessica's call. She had told him she was conducting a background check for a potential employer and needed to verify my rental history. Tom found her questions strange because she was asking about Maya's father and whether men frequently visited my apartment. He refused to provide any information and warned me about the call. My upstairs neighbor Mrs. Patterson, 67F, knocked on my door Wednesday morning. She said a woman had approached her in the parking lot asking questions about my family situation. Mrs. Patterson described Jessica perfectly: blonde hair, medium height, driving a red Honda Civic. Jessica had asked Mrs. Patterson whether she had ever seen Maya with a man who might be her father. The call to Maya's pediatrician was the most disturbing. The office manager Diane, 38F, called to inform me that someone claiming to be my sister had requested Maya's medical records. When Diane asked for identification and verification, the caller became agitated and hung up. Diane checked with me to confirm I did not have a sister trying to access Maya's records. My college roommate Amy, 29F, reached out through Facebook after Jessica contacted her. Amy said Jessica had found her through old tagged photos on my social media and claimed to be planning a surprise reunion for me. Jessica asked Amy detailed questions about my dating history in college, specifically about Ryan and David. Amy became suspicious and refused to provide information, then reached out to warn me. Marcus advised me to document all these contacts and file a motion with the court to expand the restraining order. He said Jessica's behavior showed she was systematically trying to gather information about me and Maya, which indicated she had no intention of stopping her harassment. But the most shocking development came 2 weeks after the restraining order was served. Ryan finally contacted me directly. His call came on a Saturday morning while Maya and I were having breakfast. She was working on a coloring book at the kitchen table when my phone rang. I almost did not answer because I did not recognize the number, but something made me pick up. Ryan's voice was strained and tired. He asked if we could meet to discuss Jessica's behavior. He said the situation had spiraled completely out of control and he needed to explain some things to me. We agreed to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown while Maya stayed with Claire. Ryan looked terrible when he arrived at the coffee shop. He had dark circles under his eyes and appeared to have lost weight. He sat down across from me and immediately apologized for everything Jessica had put me through. What Ryan told me during that conversation changed my entire understanding of the situation. According to Ryan, Jessica had been struggling with infertility for over 2 years. They had been through multiple rounds of treatments, 2 miscarriages, and countless doctor appointments. The stress had put enormous strain on their marriage, and Jessica had become obsessed with the idea of having a baby. Ryan said Jessica's fixation on Maya began before the company picnic. She had apparently found old photos of me on Ryan's social media accounts from years ago and had become convinced that Ryan still had feelings for me. When she saw Maya at the picnic, she latched onto the idea that Maya was Ryan's daughter as an explanation for why their own fertility treatments were not working. But here is the part that made my blood run cold. Ryan admitted that he had not been entirely honest with Jessica about our past relationship. When she first asked him about me after the picnic, he told her we had dated briefly in college and that was all. He did not mention that we had lived together for almost 2 years or that our breakup had been difficult for both of us. Ryan said he downplayed our relationship because he did not want to upset Jessica during an already stressful time. But his vague answers and defensive behavior when she pressed for details only fueled her suspicions. She interpreted his reluctance to discuss me as evidence that he was hiding something significant. The situation got worse when Jessica started going through Ryan's old belongings. She found a box of college memorabilia that included photos of us together, a birthday card I had given him, and other mementos from our relationship. Instead of seeing these as normal keepsakes from a past relationship, Jessica saw them as evidence that Ryan had been pining for me all these years. Ryan told me he tried to convince Jessica that her suspicions were baseless, but she had already committed to her theory. She started monitoring his communications, checking his location constantly, and demanding detailed explanations for his activities. Their marriage was falling apart under the weight of her obsession. The most disturbing revelation was that Jessica had been taking photos of Maya without my knowledge. Ryan said she had driven to Maya's daycare multiple times to observe pick-up and drop-off times. She had taken pictures of Maya playing in the yard and had even followed us to the grocery store to get more photos for her comparison collection. Ryan showed me some of these photos on his phone. Seeing images of my daughter that I had not taken, in places where I thought we were safe, made me physically sick. Jessica had been stalking Maya for weeks without my knowledge. Ryan said he had tried to get Jessica to seek professional help, but she refused. She insisted that everyone else was blind to the truth and that she was the only one willing to investigate properly. She had become convinced that Ryan, me, and even David were all part of some elaborate conspiracy to hide Maya's true parentage. The breaking point in their marriage came when Ryan discovered Jessica had withdrawn money from their savings account to hire the private investigator she had mentioned in her emails. She had spent over $3,000 on surveillance and background checks without telling him. Ryan said he gave Jessica an ultimatum after finding out about the private investigator. She could either seek counseling and stop harassing me, or he would file for separation and move out of their shared apartment. Jessica chose to double down on her investigation instead of getting help. By the time Ryan contacted me, he had already consulted with a divorce attorney and was prepared to end their marriage. He said he could not continue living with someone who had become so detached from reality that she was stalking a 4-year-old child. Ryan asked if there was anything he could do to help resolve the situation. He offered to provide a statement to the court supporting my restraining order request and said he would testify about Jessica's behavior if necessary. He also offered to pay for any legal expenses I had incurred dealing with Jessica's harassment. I appreciated Ryan's apology and his offer to help, but I was angry that he had allowed the situation to escalate so far. If he had been honest with Jessica about our past relationship from the beginning, or if he had intervened when her behavior first became concerning, Maya and I might never have been dragged into their marital problems. Ryan left the coffee shop that day looking defeated. He said he was planning to move out of their apartment within the week and would do everything possible to keep Jessica away from me and Maya. 2 days after my conversation with Ryan, Jessica violated the restraining order by showing up at Maya's daycare. The daycare director, Ms. Rodriguez, 44F, called me at work around 2 in the afternoon. She said a woman matching Jessica's description had come to the facility claiming to be Maya's aunt. When staff asked for identification and emergency contact verification, Jessica became agitated and demanded to see Maya immediately. Ms. Rodriguez handled the situation perfectly. She told Jessica that the facility could not allow unauthorized visitors to see children and asked her to leave. When Jessica refused and started raising her voice, Ms. Rodriguez called the police and locked down the facility as a precaution. Police arrived within 10 minutes and arrested Jessica for violating the restraining order. The officers called me to confirm Jessica's identity and to let me know she had been taken into custody. I left work immediately to pick up Maya, who was unaware of the incident since it happened during her nap time. Jessica spent 2 nights in jail before posting bail. The prosecutor's office contacted me about pressing charges for violating the restraining order, and I agreed to cooperate fully with their case. But Jessica's arrest did not end her campaign against me. It just changed her tactics. Since she could no longer contact me directly or approach places where Maya and I spent time, Jessica started reaching out to anyone who might have connections to us. She contacted my former coworkers, old friends from college, even distant relatives she found through online searches. My cousin Beth, 33F, called me last weekend after receiving a Facebook message from Jessica. The message claimed that I was involved in a custody dispute and that Beth's testimony about my character could help resolve the situation. Jessica asked Beth to call a phone number to discuss what she knew about my relationships and parenting abilities. Beth immediately recognized this as suspicious and called me instead of responding to Jessica. She forwarded me screenshots of Jessica's message, which was full of leading questions designed to gather negative information about me. Similar messages were sent to at least 6 other people in my extended network. Each message was slightly different but followed the same pattern. Jessica claimed there was a legal proceeding involving Maya's custody and that she needed character witnesses to testify about my fitness as a parent. Most of the people Jessica contacted ignored her messages or blocked her immediately. But 2 people were concerned enough to reach out to me for clarification. Having to explain the situation to distant acquaintances was embarrassing and exhausting. Marcus filed a motion to expand the restraining order to include contact with my family members and associates. The hearing is scheduled for next Friday, and he is confident the judge will approve the expansion given Jessica's pattern of escalating behavior. Meanwhile, Ryan followed through on his promise to leave Jessica. He moved out of their apartment 2 weeks ago and is staying with his brother while he looks for his own place. He texted me once to let me know he had changed his address and phone number and that Jessica no longer had access to his location or communications. Ryan also provided a written statement to my attorney detailing Jessica's obsessive behavior and confirming that Maya could not possibly be his daughter. His statement included the timeline of our relationship, documentation of when we lost contact, and his observations about Jessica's declining mental state. The private investigator Jessica hired also contacted Marcus after Ryan stopped paying the bills. The investigator said Jessica had asked him to conduct surveillance on me and Maya, but he refused to continue working for her after realizing she was violating a restraining order. He provided copies of all reports he had prepared for Jessica, which mainly consisted of our daily routines and publicly available information. Reading those surveillance reports was violating in a way I cannot adequately describe. The investigator had documented Maya's schedule, noted which playgrounds we visited, recorded the times we went grocery shopping, and even identified the route I took to work each day. Jessica had been systematically mapping our lives for weeks. Maya has started asking more questions about why we have been spending so much time at Aunt Claire's house and why we always park in different places when we go out. I have tried to keep my explanations age-appropriate while still preparing her to be cautious around strangers. Last night, Maya asked if the bad lady was still trying to take her picture. I had not realized she was aware of Jessica's surveillance, but apparently Maya had noticed someone watching us at the park several weeks ago. The fact that my 4-year-old daughter was conscious of being stalked made me so angry I had to leave the room to compose myself. The court date for Jessica's restraining order violation is set for next month. The prosecutor said they are seeking jail time because Jessica has shown no remorse and continues to violate the spirit of the order even when she cannot violate the letter of it. I have been documenting every contact attempt, every message sent to my family and friends, and every instance of continued harassment. The file is now over 2 inches thick and includes emails, screenshots, phone records, and witness statements from more than a dozen people. This situation has taken over my life in ways I never imagined. I find myself constantly checking over my shoulder, varying my routines, and screening phone calls from unknown numbers. Maya and I have not been to our favorite park in 3 weeks because I am afraid Jessica might be watching. The most frustrating part is that Jessica could end this entire nightmare by simply accepting reality. Maya is not Ryan's daughter. David is Maya's father, and I have documentation to prove it. But Jessica has invested so much time and energy into her conspiracy theory that admitting she was wrong would require her to acknowledge that she has been harassing an innocent family for months. Instead, she continues to double down on her delusions and drag more people into her obsession. At this point, I do not think anything will convince her to stop except a jail sentence or a complete mental health intervention. The expanded restraining order hearing is next Friday. Maya will be staying with Claire while I attend court, and I am hoping the judge will finally put restrictions in place that will give us some peace. Update 2. Jessica was sentenced to 90 days in jail for violating the restraining order, but that did not stop her family from taking up her cause. The situation has now expanded beyond just Jessica's harassment to include her mother and sister actively working to prove Maya is Ryan's daughter. The hearing for Jessica's restraining order violation took place 6 weeks ago. The prosecutor presented a strong case that included all of Jessica's emails, the surveillance reports from her private investigator, witness testimony from my coworkers and Maya's daycare staff, and documentation of her attempts to contact my family members. Jessica represented herself at the hearing after firing 2 different lawyers who told her she had no viable defense. She used her time to present a rambling statement about how she was being persecuted for trying to uncover the truth about Maya's parentage. She claimed that everyone involved in the case was part of a conspiracy to protect Ryan's reputation and deny her the right to know if Maya was her stepdaughter. The judge was not impressed with Jessica's performance. He noted that she had shown no remorse for her actions and seemed to view the legal proceedings as another platform to spread her accusations. He sentenced her to 90 days in jail with no possibility of early release and extended the restraining order for an additional 2 years. I thought Jessica's imprisonment would finally give Maya and me some peace. For about 3 weeks, it did. We returned to our normal routines, Maya went back to her favorite playground, and I stopped constantly checking over my shoulder when we were out in public. Then Jessica's mother Carol, 54F, called me. Carol identified herself as Jessica's mother and asked if we could meet to discuss the situation involving Maya. She was polite but persistent, saying she understood my perspective but believed there had been misunderstandings that could be cleared up if we just talked. I told Carol I was not interested in meeting and asked her not to contact me again. She said she respected my position but hoped I would reconsider because family was important and Maya deserved to know her real relatives. The implication that Maya might be Carol's granddaughter was clear, and I ended the call immediately. I contacted Marcus to report the contact, and he sent Carol a cease and desist letter reminding her that interfering with the restraining order could result in criminal charges. Carol's response was to involve Jessica's sister Amanda, 26F, who took a more aggressive approach than her mother. Amanda found my work email address and sent a message claiming to be a genealogy researcher working on a family tree project. She said she had found records suggesting Maya might be related to their family and asked if I would be willing to participate in a DNA study to help complete their research. The email was professionally written and might have seemed legitimate to someone who did not know the context. But Amanda made the mistake of including too many specific details about Maya's appearance and behavior that could only have come from Jessica's surveillance. I forwarded Amanda's email to Marcus, who contacted the police. Since Amanda was not specifically named in the restraining order, she had not technically violated any legal boundaries. But her email was clearly part of a coordinated effort to continue Jessica's harassment while Jessica was in jail. Marcus sent Amanda a cease and desist letter as well, warning her that her contact could be considered criminal harassment. Amanda's response was to create fake social media accounts and send friend requests to people in my network. My sister Claire received a friend request from someone claiming to be a college classmate interested in reconnecting. When Claire looked at the profile more closely, she realized all the photos were stock images and the account had been created recently. She declined the request and warned me about it. Similar fake accounts tried to connect with my coworkers, neighbors, and even Maya's daycare teachers. Each account had a slightly different backstory, but they all eventually steered conversations toward questions about Maya's family situation. The most disturbing incident happened when Amanda approached Mrs. Patterson in our apartment complex parking lot. Mrs. Patterson recognized Amanda's voice as similar to the person who had questioned her months earlier about Maya's father. Amanda told Mrs. Patterson she was a social worker investigating a complaint about Maya's care. She showed Mrs. Patterson what appeared to be official paperwork and asked detailed questions about our living situation, Maya's daily routine, and whether Mrs. Patterson had ever observed anything concerning about my parenting. Mrs. Patterson became suspicious when Amanda asked her to sign a statement about her observations. She told Amanda she needed to verify her credentials before providing any information and came directly to my apartment to warn me about the encounter. When I called the social services office to report the incident, they confirmed that no investigation was open regarding Maya and that Amanda was not employed by their agency. The paperwork Amanda had shown Mrs. Patterson was fake, likely downloaded from the internet and filled in with fabricated information. This incident crossed a serious line because impersonating a social worker is a felony in our state. I filed a police report immediately, and Amanda was arrested 3 days later when she tried the same tactic with one of my neighbors who called the police instead of answering her questions. Amanda spent one night in jail before posting bail, but her arrest seemed to wake up Carol to the seriousness of what her daughters were doing. Carol called me the day after Amanda's release to apologize and promise that her family would stop contacting me. But Carol's apology came with a request. She asked if I would consider allowing a DNA test to prove once and for all that Maya was not Ryan's daughter. She said the test would settle the matter permanently and allow both families to move on with their lives. Carol seemed genuinely remorseful about her daughter's behavior, and her request was polite rather than demanding. But I refused for several reasons that I explained to Marcus and later documented in a letter to Carol through my attorney. First, Maya is 4 years old and does not understand why strangers are obsessed with her parentage. Subjecting her to a medical procedure to satisfy someone else's delusions would be traumatic and inappropriate. Second, I have already provided extensive documentation of Maya's true parentage to multiple courts and law enforcement agencies. David's paternity is established legally and medically, and I am not required to prove it again for Jessica's family. Third, agreeing to a DNA test would validate Jessica's conspiracy theory and encourage her to believe she was right to investigate Maya's parentage. It would also set a precedent that anyone can demand genetic testing of someone else's child if they claim to suspect hidden paternity. Finally, Jessica's behavior has been so extreme and invasive that her family does not deserve accommodation or cooperation from me. They have had multiple opportunities to end this harassment, and instead they have chosen to escalate it even while Jessica is in jail. Marcus sent my response to Carol through her attorney, who had apparently been hired after Amanda's arrest. Carol's lawyer sent back a formal letter acknowledging our position and stating that his clients would respect the restraining order and cease all contact with me and my family. That agreement lasted exactly 2 weeks. The next contact came from Jessica herself, who had apparently convinced another inmate to make phone calls on her behalf. My phone rang at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, and when I answered, I heard Jessica's voice asking why I was so afraid of the truth that I would not even allow a simple DNA test. Jessica spoke quickly, clearly aware that the call was being recorded and that she was violating multiple rules by making it. She said she had been talking to other women in jail who told her that innocent people do not refuse DNA tests, and that my refusal was proof she had been right all along. Before I could respond or hang up, Jessica said she had been studying Maya's photos and had identified additional similarities to Ryan that proved their relationship. She claimed Maya had inherited Ryan's chin dimple, the shape of his ears, and even his left-handed tendencies. The call ended abruptly, presumably because the inmate making it for Jessica ran out of phone time or was discovered by guards. I reported the call to the jail administration and to Marcus, who filed a complaint with the court about Jessica violating her sentence conditions. The jail warden called me the next day to apologize and explain that Jessica had been placed in solitary confinement as punishment for the unauthorized phone call. She would lose all phone privileges for the remainder of her sentence and would serve additional time for violating the conditions of her imprisonment. But the damage was done. Jessica's late-night call had rattled me badly, particularly her detailed comments about Maya's physical characteristics. The idea that Jessica had been studying photos of my daughter closely enough to notice things like hand preference was deeply disturbing. I realized that Jessica's obsession had not diminished during her time in jail. If anything, her isolation had given her more time to focus on her conspiracy theory and develop new arguments to support it. 2 weeks after Jessica's phone call, I received a package at my apartment with no return address. Inside was a folder containing printed photos of Maya, Ryan, and David arranged in comparison layouts. Someone had used photo editing software to highlight facial features and draw lines connecting similar characteristics between Maya and Ryan. The package also included a typed letter claiming to be from an independent forensic analyst who had studied the photos and concluded that Maya showed strong genetic similarities to Ryan. The letter stated that facial recognition software had identified multiple matching features and recommended immediate DNA testing to confirm the relationship. I took the package directly to Marcus, who immediately recognized it as another attempt by Jessica's family to harass me. The forensic analysis was clearly fake, the letterhead belonged to a company that did not exist, and the technical language was copied from legitimate forensic websites. Marcus contacted the postal inspector to report the anonymous package, and we filed additional complaints against Carol and Amanda for continuing their harassment campaign. The postal inspector said they would investigate the origin of the package, but warned that proving who sent it might be difficult without additional evidence. The fake forensic report was particularly troubling because it showed sophisticated planning and effort. Someone had spent considerable time creating professional-looking documentation to support Jessica's theory, which suggested the harassment would continue even while Jessica remained in jail. 3 days after receiving the package, Maya's daycare called to report another incident. A woman claiming to be from the health department had contacted them asking for information about Maya's medical records and vaccination status. When the daycare director asked for official identification, the caller hung up. Ms. Rodriguez recognized the caller's voice as similar to Amanda's voice from her previous visit to the facility. She immediately called me and filed a report with the police about the attempted impersonation of a health official. Amanda was arrested again 2 days later when she tried to obtain Maya's school registration records using fake credentials. The elementary school Maya would attend in the fall had stricter verification procedures than Amanda expected, and they contacted authorities when her documentation did not match their database. This second arrest resulted in Amanda being charged with multiple felonies, including identity theft, fraud, and criminal harassment. Her bail was set much higher than before, and she remained in jail for over a week before her family could raise the money to release her. Carol finally contacted my attorney directly after Amanda's second arrest. She asked for a meeting to discuss ending the situation before it destroyed her entire family. Marcus agreed to meet with Carol and her lawyer, but only if Carol signed a binding agreement to cease all contact with me and Maya permanently. The meeting took place in Marcus's office on a Friday afternoon. Carol attended with her attorney and brought a written statement acknowledging that Maya was not Ryan's daughter and that her family had no legitimate reason to investigate Maya's parentage. Carol also agreed to pay for all legal expenses I had incurred dealing with her family's harassment, which by that point totaled over $8,000. She said she had refinanced her house to cover Amanda's legal fees and my costs, and that the financial strain was forcing her to face reality about Jessica's delusions. Most importantly, Carol provided information about Jessica's mental health history that explained some of her behavior. According to Carol, Jessica had struggled with obsessive-compulsive disorder and anxiety since childhood, but had refused treatment as an adult. The fertility struggles had triggered a severe episode that Carol now realized required professional intervention. Carol said she had arranged for Jessica to be transferred to a facility that could provide mental health treatment during the remainder of her sentence. She also committed to ensuring Jessica received ongoing psychiatric care after her release, including medication management and therapy. The meeting ended with Carol signing a comprehensive agreement that prohibited any member of her family from contacting me, Maya, or anyone in our network. The agreement also required Carol to monitor Jessica's activities after her release and to notify authorities immediately if Jessica showed signs of resuming her harassment. Marcus was satisfied with the agreement, but warned me that legal documents could not guarantee Jessica would stop her obsessive behavior once she was released from jail. He recommended that I maintain heightened security measures and continue documenting any suspicious activity for at least a year after Jessica's release. The past month has been quieter since Carol signed the agreement. Amanda pled guilty to her charges and received probation with the condition that she have no contact with me or Maya. Carol has honored her commitment to pay my legal expenses and has not attempted any further communication. But I know this is not really over. Jessica still has 6 weeks left in her sentence, and I have no confidence that psychiatric treatment will cure her obsession with Maya. The fake forensic report and coordinated family harassment showed a level of commitment to this delusion that goes beyond normal mental health issues. Maya has started asking fewer questions about why we changed our routines, but she still occasionally mentions the bad lady who wanted to take her picture. I have enrolled her in a self-defense class designed for young children, partly for practical protection and partly to help her feel more confident about her personal safety. Ryan has maintained his distance throughout this entire ordeal. He sent one brief email after Amanda's first arrest, apologizing again for his role in creating the situation and offering to provide additional testimony if needed. I appreciated his offer but asked him to avoid any further contact unless absolutely necessary for legal proceedings. David, Maya's actual father, contacted me last month after somehow learning about the harassment. He offered to fly in from Portland to provide testimony about Maya's parentage if it would help end the situation. I thanked him but explained that we already had sufficient documentation and that his involvement might only complicate matters further. The hardest part of this entire experience has been watching how it affected Maya. She is too young to understand the adult complexities of the situation, but she clearly sensed the stress and fear it caused me. Children pick up on much more than we realized, and I know Maya was aware that something dangerous was happening even when I tried to protect her from the details. Looking back, I wish I had taken Jessica's first Facebook message more seriously and involved authorities immediately instead of trying to handle it quietly. The situation might have been contained before it escalated to stalking and harassment if I had recognized earlier how unstable Jessica was. But I also recognized that nothing I did caused this situation. Jessica created an elaborate fantasy about Maya's parentage and then recruited her family to help prove her delusions. The responsibility for all of this harassment lies entirely with Jessica and the family members who enabled her behavior. Jessica's release date is still 6 weeks away, and I am already planning additional security measures for when that time comes. I have installed security cameras around my apartment, changed Maya's daycare pickup procedures, and arranged for flexible work schedules so I can vary our daily routines. Marcus has prepared paperwork to seek an extended restraining order if Jessica shows any signs of resuming her harassment after her release. We have also discussed the possibility of relocating if Jessica's behavior escalates again, though I hope it will not come to that. For now, Maya and I are trying to rebuild our sense of normalcy and security. The experience has been traumatic for both of us, but it has also shown me how strong our support network is and how many people were willing to help protect us when we needed it most. Update 3. Jessica was released from jail 3 weeks ago, and within 5 days she had violated her restraining order again. This time, I made the decision to relocate with Maya to protect us both from what has clearly become a permanent obsession. Jessica's release date was August 15th. I had prepared for weeks, arranging additional security measures and alerting everyone in our network to be watchful for suspicious activity. Maya's daycare had special protocols in place, my workplace security was briefed on the situation, and I had changed our phone numbers and social media settings to maximum privacy. For the first 4 days after Jessica's release, everything seemed normal. There were no attempted contacts, no suspicious vehicles in our area, and no reports from friends or family about harassment attempts. I started to hope that the jail time and psychiatric treatment had finally convinced Jessica to abandon her obsession with Maya. On August 19th, that hope was shattered. Maya and I were at the grocery store around 6 in the evening, following our usual Thursday shopping routine. Maya was helping me select apples in the produce section when I noticed a woman watching us from the end of the aisle. The woman had short dark hair and was wearing sunglasses, but something about her posture seemed familiar. I moved Maya to a different section of the store, and the woman followed at a distance. When I stopped to examine breakfast cereals, she pretended to shop for pasta. When I moved to the dairy section, she appeared near the frozen foods. The pattern was too obvious to be coincidental. I called Claire while pretending to check my shopping list and asked her to meet us at the store. Claire arrived within 10 minutes and immediately spotted the woman who had been following us. Claire walked directly up to her and asked if she needed help finding anything. The woman claimed to be shopping for her family and tried to walk away, but Claire had already recognized her as Jessica despite the changed hair color and sunglasses. Claire told Jessica loudly that she was violating a restraining order and needed to leave the store immediately. Jessica's response was to approach Maya and me directly. She walked over to our cart and told Maya that she was a friend of Mommy's who wanted to talk to her. Jessica knelt down to Maya's eye level and said she had been looking forward to meeting her for a very long time. Maya, who is now 4.5 and much more aware of stranger danger than she was a year ago, immediately moved behind my legs and asked why the lady was talking to her. I picked Maya up and told Jessica to stay away from us. Jessica stood up and started speaking rapidly about how she just wanted to see Maya up close and confirm what she already knew to be true. She said Maya looked exactly like Ryan and that everyone could see the resemblance if they just looked carefully. Other shoppers had started to notice the confrontation, and one of them called store security. Jessica realized she was about to be in trouble again and tried to leave quickly, but security had already blocked the exits. The police arrived within minutes and arrested Jessica for violating the restraining order. This time, she was also charged with approaching a minor in violation of court orders, which carried more serious penalties than her previous violations. Maya was frightened by the whole incident but handled it better than I expected. She asked why the lady knew her name and why she wanted to talk to her so badly. I explained that some people get confused about things and that the lady had made a mistake about who Maya was. The arrest should have been the end of it, but Jessica's behavior in custody showed that her obsession had only intensified during her previous jail term. According to the police report, Jessica told officers that she had been planning to approach Maya for weeks and that seeing her in person had confirmed all of her suspicions about Maya's parentage. Jessica claimed that Maya's facial expressions and body language were identical to Ryan's and that no amount of legal documents could change what she could see with her own eyes. She demanded that the officers look at photos she had been carrying in her purse to see the resemblance for themselves. The photos Jessica was carrying were new ones of Maya, apparently taken during the 3 weeks since her release from jail. This meant Jessica had been conducting surveillance on us again despite the restraining order and her recent imprisonment. Marcus filed motions for enhanced charges and requested that Jessica be held without bail pending trial. The prosecutor agreed that Jessica posed a continuing threat to Maya and me, and the judge ordered her held until her trial date. But the grocery store incident was not Jessica's only violation of the restraining order during her brief period of freedom. Over the following days, we discovered she had also been busy contacting people in our network again. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson received a visit from Jessica 3 days before the grocery store incident. Jessica had knocked on Mrs. Patterson's door claiming to be conducting a survey about neighborhood safety. When Mrs. Patterson invited her inside, Jessica steered the conversation toward questions about Maya and me. Jessica told Mrs. Patterson she was concerned about Maya's welfare because she believed Maya was being kept from her biological father. She showed Mrs. Patterson photos comparing Maya to Ryan and asked if Mrs. Patterson had ever noticed the resemblance. Mrs. Patterson, who is in her late 60s and not familiar with the full scope of Jessica's harassment, initially listened politely to what seemed like a concerned neighbor. But Jessica's presentation became increasingly agitated and obsessive, and Mrs. Patterson eventually asked her to leave. Jessica also contacted Maya's daycare director Ms. Rodriguez by phone, claiming to be from the state licensing department investigating a complaint about the facility. She asked detailed questions about Maya's daily routine, which children she played with, and whether staff had noticed anything unusual about her family's situation. Ms. Rodriguez recognized Jessica's voice from their previous encounters and immediately ended the call. She then contacted me and filed a report with the actual state licensing department to document the attempted fraud. Most disturbing was Jessica's attempt to approach Maya's pediatrician's office. The office manager Diane called me to report that a woman matching Jessica's description had come to their office claiming to be Maya's grandmother. She requested copies of Maya's medical records and asked to schedule an appointment to discuss concerns about Maya's development. When Diane asked for identification and verification of the grandmother relationship, Jessica became agitated and accused the office staff of participating in a conspiracy to hide Maya's true parentage. She was asked to leave and told that security would be called if she returned. These incidents show that Jessica had been systematically attempting to gather information about Maya and insert herself into Maya's life during the brief time she was free. The level of planning and coordination required for these activities proved that Jessica's obsession had not diminished during her psychiatric treatment in jail. After Jessica's arrest at the grocery store, Marcus and I had a serious conversation about long-term safety for Maya and me. He advised that Jessica's behavior showed clear signs of escalating rather than improving, and that traditional legal remedies might not be sufficient to protect us. Marcus recommended that I consider relocating to a different city or state where Jessica would have no knowledge of our whereabouts. He said that while restraining orders and criminal charges were important tools, they could not prevent Jessica from continuing her harassment once she was eventually released from custody. The decision to relocate was one of the hardest I have ever made. Maya and I had built a life in our city, with friends, family, work connections, and familiar routines. Leaving meant abandoning our support network and starting over in a place where we knew no one. But Maya's safety had to be my priority, and it was clear that Jessica would never stop her obsession as long as she knew where to find us. Her behavior had already traumatized Maya once, and I could not risk exposing her to more frightening encounters with someone who had lost touch with reality. Claire supported my decision to relocate, though she was devastated about us leaving. She helped me research cities with good job markets in my field and strong public school systems for Maya. We settled on a mid-sized city about 600 miles away where I had received a job offer from a marketing firm. The relocation process took 3 weeks to arrange. I gave notice at my current job, broke my apartment lease, arranged for Maya's school records to be transferred, and handled the dozens of other details involved in moving across state lines. The hardest part was explaining to Maya why we had to leave our home and friends. I told her we were going on an adventure to a new city where we could make new friends and explore new places. Maya was excited about the idea of adventure but sad about leaving her daycare friends and Claire. We left on September 10th, driving to our new city with only the belongings that fit in my car. Everything else was shipped separately to avoid leaving a trail that Jessica might be able to follow. I paid cash for temporary housing and used a different name on utility accounts to make it harder for anyone to trace our location. Maya adjusted to our new city better than I expected. She started at a new daycare and made friends quickly. Our new apartment is in a secure building with controlled access, and Maya's daycare has strict pickup procedures that require photo identification for anyone collecting children. I have not told anyone from our previous city where we relocated, including Claire and my other family members. We communicate by phone and email, but I have asked them not to share any information about our whereabouts with anyone who asks. This means Maya cannot see her favorite aunt in person, which breaks my heart, but it is necessary for our safety. Marcus has kept me updated on Jessica's legal proceedings. She was convicted of violating the restraining order and received an additional 18 months in jail. She was also ordered to undergo mandatory psychiatric evaluation and treatment, and her release will be contingent on demonstrating that she no longer poses a threat to Maya and me. The conviction finally convinced Jessica's family that her behavior was beyond normal concern about family relationships. Carol sent a letter through Marcus acknowledging that Jessica needed serious mental health intervention and promising to support whatever treatment was required to address her obsession. Ryan also sent a brief message through Marcus expressing his regret about the entire situation and his hope that Maya and I could find peace in our new location. He said he had blocked all communication with Jessica's family and would not provide any information about me or Maya to anyone who asked. Maya and I have been in our new city for 6 weeks now, and for the first time in over a year, I feel like we can breathe freely. Maya no longer asks about the bad lady who wanted to take her picture, and she seems more relaxed and happier than she has been in months. I found a job with a marketing firm that specializes in healthcare communications, which is actually better aligned with my career goals than my previous position. Maya's new daycare has an excellent curriculum and caring teachers who have helped her adjust to our new environment. We have started building new routines and making new friends. Maya particularly enjoys the children's museum near our apartment and the playground at the elementary school she will attend next year. These simple pleasures remind me of what normal life should feel like for a mother and her 4-year-old daughter. I do miss our old life and the people we left behind. Claire visits us once a month, and we video chat with other family members regularly. But those connections cannot replace the daily support network we had before Jessica's obsession forced us to relocate. The financial cost of relocating was significant, even after Carol paid our legal expenses. Moving across state lines, breaking lease agreements, and establishing new housing required thousands of dollars I had not budgeted for. But no amount of money is too much to pay for Maya's safety and our peace of mind. I have learned to live with the reality that Jessica may never accept the truth about Maya's parentage. Even with psychiatric treatment and legal consequences, some obsessions are too deeply rooted to be easily resolved. The important thing is that Maya and I are now beyond Jessica's reach and can focus on building a healthy, normal life together. Maya will be 5 years old next month, and she is thriving in our new environment. She talks about her new friends at daycare, asks questions about starting kindergarten, and shows no signs of trauma from our experiences with Jessica's harassment. Sometimes I wonder if I should have handled the situation differently from the beginning. Maybe if I had been more direct with Jessica initially, or if I had involved authorities sooner, we might not have needed to relocate. But I cannot change the past, and I am grateful that we found a solution that protects Maya from further harm. Jessica's obsession consumed almost a year of our lives and forced us to abandon the community where Maya was born and raised. But it also taught me how strong I can be when my daughter's safety is at stake, and how important it is to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. Maya and I are building a new life now, free from the fear and stress that dominated our days for so many months. It is not the life I planned for us, but it is safe and peaceful, and that is what matters most. We are finally free to be just a normal mother and daughter, without constantly looking over our shoulders or worrying about what obsessed stranger might be watching us.